Hello, and welcome to As We Go Canning Edition. Now, I would apologize for the state of my kitchen, but after what I put it through yesterday, I'm actually pretty proud at how good it looks. So, this will be Canning 101 supplies. I had a friend ask me for some tips and tricks on how to get started on this, and I love canning. It makes me feel real good about myself, and I could probably talk about it for far too long, so I decided to make it easy on her so she could skip past the parts she doesn't want to watch. Figured some others might be interested as well. So this is Canning 101. This one is going to be all about the supplies that you might need to can. Well, that you do need to can. So, number one, we have jars. These are quart jars, and I've used Ball, I've used Kerr, these ones are Kerr, and I haven't noticed any difference. They're just glass jars, that's all they are. So these ones are quart size jars. This is what you'll find. This one looks like an old applesauce jar that has been reused. A lot of my jars were given to me by friends and family who no longer can, and I have so many, but every time I walk through the store, it's so tempting to get more because they come all nice and fresh, and obviously, as you can see, you can wash them and they become fresh again. So, these ones are quart. This is what I have been doing my spaghetti sauce in. If you have applesauce, or I also do apple cider, I will do that in this size. Juices, sauces. I have a friend who does peaches, and she does hers in this size. So, honestly, it's just what you prefer and what size family you have. Doesn't matter. These are the pints right here. All of my salsa is in pints. I also have done pickles and stuff. Those go in pints as well. And then, of course, these are the half pint jars. And I do jams in these. I do freezer jams, which technically you're not supposed to do in glass because of the glass breaks in the freezer. That's difficult. But I keep losing all my plastic containers, so I do freezer jams in here, but I've also canned jam in these, and they work really well. The next thing that you're going to need is lids. These are the lids right here. And I get them fresh every single time just because I don't want to have to reprocess anything if they don't seal. I know people who reuse their lids, and here's what they look like. This is your lid. It's got a sealing wax around the rim there, and you place it when it's time. You place it on top there, and these are called bands right here. And these are reusable. You can wash these and reuse them. They do say if they get rusty not to use them as much, but generally if there's a few specks of rust, I don't know if you can tell, there's a few specks on this one. If there's a few specks of rust, it's not going to be a huge deal. But these are the bands. They go over the lid. Obviously that one is not sealed. They have this little popping mechanism. When it's sealed, you can push down on that and nothing happens because it's created a vacuum inside. So, which is a nice feature because after you're done canning, you do have to make sure everything is sealed up tight. So, when COVID hit, these were so hard to find. So every time I'm in the store, I'll actually buy a couple of these if canning season is coming up, and I make sure I have probably about 50 on hand at least, just in case, because you don't want to be caught with nothing when canning season arrives. So, one word or one mention about these is these are the regular mouth. They do have, and here's my supply bucket here. They do have wide mouth jars, and some people, I have a few, 99% of my jars are regular mouth, but a lot of people prefer the wide mouth jars. You can see the difference there. They're just easier to fill, and I will admit they're also easier to empty. So if you're making spaghetti sauce and you need to just dump all of it out into a pan to warm it up, it's easier if you have a wide mouth jar. It really is. But because all of my jars are regular mouth, and most of them are, I just stick with regular mouth because that's what I have. So, oh, side note, These are kind of nice because after you've opened your can, if you haven't used all of it, these are just, and these ones are wide mouth, so they don't necessarily fit on my regular jars. But these are just a different lid that you can put on where you don't have the two pieces. And because they're plastic, they won't rust. They can easily wash in the dishwasher, reuse them over and over again. It's kind of nice. They don't can. These do not can. These are for after you've opened your previously canned jar. So if I were to just use half of this spaghetti sauce, I would get out a smaller one of these and use that instead of this lid, just because it's nicer. Anyway, canning tools. So this one is a must-have. I don't know the name of any of these. This is the jar grabber. That's what I call it. How it works is when you are putting jars in and out of hot water, you don't want to use your hands. Obviously, oven mitts won't work because they soak up the hot water, and you know, that kind of seems like an obvious thing, but you don't really think about it until you're standing there wondering how you're going to get a jar out. So this is an absolute must. Essentially, you can do it one-handed. You put it on there, you squeeze, it grips underneath the rim there, and then you can lift in and out of the water. I use it all the time. I'm thinking about getting another one. This one it still works great, but I don't know if it's my klutziness or whatnot, but a couple of times I've actually dropped jars this year. So I don't know if it's because this starts to wear out. I've done probably hundreds of jars with this thing. I don't know. Well, I guess it might start to wear out eventually, but I love it. I use it constantly. Another thing that you want is a funnel, or two, depending on how big of a batch I'm doing. I will be using a funnel. It's just easier to get things in. If you've got a big old ladle and you're trying to dump stuff in, it's just not gonna, it's gonna make a total mess. You still make a mess, but the funnel makes it so much easier to get stuff in and out of your jar. Well, not out, in your jar. So here's some other items that came with the kit that I bought, and I don't ever use them. This is a gripper. It helps you to open jars. As you can see, it's been in this thing since I bought it. Don't use it ever. This right here I used to use, but I have a different one that I use. This right here has a magnet on this side, which is nice because on another video I will show you kind of how to sterilize these lids. And this right here will pick up your lid out of the hot water nicely. So I haven't used that one as much, but I still have it just in case. The other side of this, so we have this side for picking up lids, and the other side is for sliding in your jars after you've filled them. The other side is for you slide it in all the way around, and it kind of removes all the bubbles from your whatever you've put in there, so that your headspace can be proper. So I do enjoy that, but the one that I've been using is in the dishwasher because it was used yesterday. Here it is. I highly, highly suggest. It's not necessary. You can use a ruler, but I highly suggest getting something like this. I don't know if you can tell, but on the one side, it's got markings for 1 inch, 3/4 of an inch, 1/2 inch, 1/4. And it's really nice because as you're filling your jars, instead of using a ruler to kind of try and measure, where everything is, you just do this. So this is your 1/2 inch measurement, and if the bottom of this touches your liquid, then you're good. If it goes into your liquid, you've gone too far. So yeah, it measures so nicely, and I don't have to really think about it. I just look and say, is it touching? It's not touching. Okay, I need more. Oops, it's overflowing. Let me scoop some out. Because headspace, depending on what you're canning, is the air that's left over when you put the lid on it. So your liquid, and then you have some free space, that's called your headspace, and then your lid. And this helps measure the proper headspace, which is important. So let's see. Those are just the basics of canning. This right here is, I'll talk more about this. This is a food processor. Most kitchens have one, and honestly, I only use mine with canning. Otherwise, it stays in the cupboard because I don't use it for anything else. Maybe I should, but this is the food processor. And I will talk more about this when I talk, let's see my tomato mess from yesterday. When I talk about how to prepare your vegetables. So food processor is necessary. Well, it's not necessary. It makes it 100 times faster. My first year canning, I didn't have one of these, and I diced all my vegetables by hand, and it took hours. So these are amazing. Stock pots, depending on how much you make. I made 18 of these yesterday. Now, obviously, they didn't all fit at the same time. I did 2 separate double batches to do that. But in order to do those double batches, this right here, I needed the stock pot. It was up to here, the liquid was, when I did it. And I'm not even sure what size stock pot this is. It's currently soaking, so I know it's much more than 10 quarts. I will check, and I'll put it in the description if anybody's interested in how big this stock pot is. Honestly, my family, there are 7 people. If I could have done a quadruple batch and got it all done at once, I would have, but honestly, the logistics of doing that on your stove just wouldn't work. But this is actually a decent sized stock pot. So, okay, I just looked it up. This is 12 quarts, and it works great for doing double batches. I wouldn't suggest doing any more, even though it sounds super convenient. We're going to move on to canners, and I'm going to point out the biggest problem that I have with canning. And this is it. This is the biggest problem with canning, except I'm not willing to sacrifice. This is a flat top stove, and I know a lot of people love their gas stoves. And if you have a gas stove, then the world of canning is wide open to you, because gas stoves are really good for canning. However, because I am not very good at keeping things clean and pristine, I like to make it as easy as possible. I love my flat top stove because I can just scrub it, and I don't have to take things apart. I don't have to maneuver around small areas, and my OCD, I would have to get a toothbrush to feel like I was doing it properly, and then I'd be, yeah, it wouldn't be kept very clean. It would be a once in a while chore, and it wouldn't get done. So I love my flat top stove, and I'm not willing to trade it. But that means any kind of canning that I do cannot be on the stove, because canners that go on the stove, they have this dome that creates a vacuum, or something happens inside of the dome. So you've got the part of the pan that touches is right, it goes in a circle, and then you've got this space in the middle that is not touching the stove, and that can cause your glass top stove to shatter, and it can be a very dangerous situation. So I don't even come close to my stove when I am canning, which caused a conundrum when I began, because I wanted to can, and I bought myself a steam canner, and then I realized all the warnings say don't use on flat top stoves, just use with gas stoves, or just use with your coil stoves. And so I had to find another way to do it. In fact, to this day, I still have my steam canner downstairs that I've never used. So I have 2 separate canners, and that is because there are 2 types of canning. There is water boiling, and there is pressure canning. And this one here is a water boiling canner, and I love it. It's got a spigot here that, like my water from yesterday, is still in there, but that you can use to empty out your water when you're done, which is amazing. Every canner is going to have one of these, because if you put glass straight down on the bottom, you can actually shatter the glass. So this is helpful. So this right here is a water boiling canner, and it's turned around because otherwise it wouldn't be a little empty into the sink. I don't remember where I got this one, but it's an electric one. It plugs into the wall. It heats up beautifully. It's easy to clean. It does quart-sized jars. Now, if I were to be canning these guys in here, as you can see, there's lots of space there. I could do a double layer, and I think there's instructions that tell me how to do that, but I've never been brave enough to do it because I feel like the jars would just knock against each other and break. But it's a good size canner. Quart size is as big as it goes, though. You have to have, I have half-gallon jars downstairs, but I use them for beans and stuff because I can't can in here with them, because you have to have 2 inches of water above your cans when you're canning. So when you're looking into a canner, remember that. As you can see, this one right here fits in nicely, but I do just barely have that 2 inches above. So quart is as high, is as big as I can go. So, which is fine. It works for me. I don't need anything bigger. Over here, this is my pressure canner. It also boils as well, but because it is smaller on the inside, I cannot do quart size water boiling technique. I can only do pint size, which worked just fine because I fit eight pint jars in here for my sauce yesterday, which was awesome because I got to do processing of both of my canners at the same time, which was helpful. So this is a pressure canner. I highly suggest, if you get one, you keep the instructions, because I read through them and I double check every single time. And it has a few recipes in here. I haven't used any of the recipes from here. I make sure I use a good recipe online, and then I just follow the directions. And what I love about these directions, they tell me step by step, this will light up when this happens. It will beep this many times when you're on this step. You will see this on the display when this is happening. And I love that because I second guess myself constantly. And this just tells me exactly what to do. Yeah, so this has a removable, this right here is the vent here. And when you're boiling, I did water boiling canning yesterday, so we don't even need this. You have to take it off, because if it's on there and it accidentally switches to can, see, this says vent, can, vent, can. If it actually switches to can, you're accidentally going to pressure can. You don't want to do that when you're water boiling. So this is removable, comes off. This slides on beautifully, and then you lock it in place. It's so easy to use, and I love it. And once again, because I have a glass top stove, this one is electric. It just plugs right in. I'm not using up my stove. So I do love it. Canning is so much fun, and it's so nice. Now, the last thing I'm going to tell you, you're going to need lots of big bowls and lots of towels. And I use rag towels and kitchen towels. The rag towels come when I'm doing the food prep because I don't care about them getting stained, but I do use my kitchen towels because you never put hot jars flat on a counter because they can shatter, especially we have these nice quartz counters, they're nice and cool. So if you put a hot jar on it, it will shatter. So these towels are good. They allow your jars to cool without touching the cold countertops, so they're good. Anyway, that is the basics 101. Supplies that you will need to can. I love canning. Like I said, I can talk probably too long about canning, but like this goes with my water boiler canner, and it's a mess, but I love it. I now have fresh, homemade, homegrown food to feed my family, and it's amazing.